In the stillness of the morning, little Ethan Miller sprung to his feet from his bed, his shriek breaking the stillness. A terrible leech was setting fire to the flesh of the 7-year-old, who writhed in agony as he desperately clutched at his arms. Not long after that, Sarah, his mother, rushed frantically through the door, searching for the light switch. She halted in the doorway, her palm fluttering to her mouth as the harsh fluorescent lamp flared to life. "Enormous!" she said as she hurried over to her son. Angry red welts, some in lines and others as isolated raised lumps, covered Ethan's arms. As he proudly displayed the fresh bruises on his neck and stomach, tears trickled down his reddening cheeks. "I'm getting bit again, Mummy," he cried out. "My bed is hiding from the monster." Sarah was prepared to discover the unmistakable indications of bedbugs when she pulled down his dinosaur-patterned bedding. Her son's wide, bloodshot eyes betrayed his increasing anxiety, and all she discovered was clean fabric. Once again, whatever had been harming her son had gone missing. Post a like and comment with your ideas and the city you're now watching. All right, the tale can go on from here. Sarah Miller's husband, Michael, died in a construction accident when Ethan was 4 years old. This left her with a pile of medical expenses and a traumatized small kid. Sarah became a single mother. Sarah had slept on a pull-out couch and Ethan had used the bedroom for the past 3 years as they crammed into a 1-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Springfield. She relied on a network of babysitters and after-school programs to fill the gaps as she worked double shifts as a nurse's aide at Springfield General Hospital. She would often leave before dawn and return after Ethan was asleep. They finally got a break last month. After Sarah earned her nursing certification, she and her husband were able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in Cedar Heights, thanks to a small but consistent rise. Although the building was older and the appliances were obsolete, Ethan finally had his own room, and Sarah could sleep on a real bed. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. There were good schools in the area, and the hospital was only a 15-minute drive away. After Michael's death, Sarah had finally given herself permission to feel hopeful. "They're relocating, my darling," she had informed Ethan as they lugged boxes into their new house, with his beloved teddy bear, Mr. Buttons, safely tucked beneath his arm. Michael had given Ethan Mr. Buttons as a farewell present before the catastrophe. From the doctor's office to school and nightly bedtime stories, Ethan never left the well-loved teddy bear, which had a patched paw and a missing eye. Sarah occasionally found herself conversing with the stuffed bear as well, as if it had a fragment of Michael. It seems that their new apartment management, Mrs. Cooper, was happy to have a nurse on staff. As she regarded Sarah's scrubs with approval, she had mentioned that when respectable people move in, property values went up. The remaining renters were mainly of middle-class families and a small number of long-term retirees. Upon Sarah and Ethan's introduction, their next-door neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, who was in her 70s and often reclusive, gave only a brief nod. There had been no hitches throughout the initial 3 weeks. Literally around the corner was Ethan's brand-new school. Sarah's daily journey was tolerable. Sarah had meticulously cleaned and refurbished most of their second-hand furniture, so it fit well in the more spacious rooms. Next thing you knew, the bites had begun. As Sarah helped Ethan get dressed for school, she saw 3 little red dots on his ankle. That was the beginning. After giving him a little anti-itch lotion and kissing him on the forehead, she sent him on his way, not giving them much thought because they looked like mosquito bites. She took a mental note to check for holes later and claimed that someone must have gotten in through the window screen. However, 7 further clusters of angry red pimples appeared on his back and shoulder the following morning. It was day 3 when Ethan awoke in a state of consternation, his arms and neck covered in bites that appeared to be forming patterns, some in straight lines and others in clusters of circles. As Sarah meticulously inspected each mark, her nursing training came into play. There was a clear red halo surrounding each of the tiny, elevated bites. "Spots on her bed," she murmured to herself. Surely it was. She was familiar with these kinds of instances from her time working in the hospital, where she treated low-income residents who had developed secondary illnesses after picking at insect bites. She felt sick to her stomach at the prospect of bedbugs in their new apartment. Really now, They really couldn't afford to relocate again. Sarah ripped Ethan's room to shreds that night after he had a restless night. Her flashlight swept across the bed's seams as she dismantled it to reveal the mattress. According to the hospital brochures, bedbugs like to hide in dark, confined spaces, so she made sure to inspect the baseboards, electrical outlets, and window frames. Nobody was located by her. There are no bugs, no dead skins, and no little black specks of waste. Completely non-existent. Washing all of Ethan's linens in the hottest water setting, she convinced herself that maybe they're just not active yet. She spent her week's worth of lunch money on rubbing alcohol and a plastic cover for the mattress. Sarah stayed up all night long on the floor of Ethan's room, waiting for the perpetrators to make a move so that she might catch them in the act. However, the sun and dark circles under her eyes just got worse with each passing day. The mattress protector, the alcohol spray, and the repeated washings all fell flat. The biting continued on Ethan. The results started to become apparent by the conclusion of the second week. Because of his fatigue, Ethan's normally vivacious personality waned at school. The itching or nightmares of nighttime bug bites would cause him to wake up several times a night. Sarah exhausted all possible internet options, including the use of diatomaceous earth around his bed frame, essential oils with insect-repelling claims, and sticky traps behind each bedpost. As she spent her savings on seemingly ineffective remedies, her bank account began to drain. Sarah began bringing Ethan to bed with her in the hopes that the creature biting him would go away if they were in separate rooms. For a single night, the plan was successful. Then he started to get bites all over his body, including his legs and back, while Sarah, who was sleeping next to him, was unharmed. It is completely illogical. While on break, she confided in Lisa, one of her co-workers. They seem to be focusing on him specifically. Furthermore, not a single bug has been detected. Lisa dared to think that maybe it wasn't bedbugs, possible allergic response, or perhaps scabies, dust mites. Those were options that Sarah had thought about. After removing the carpet from Ethan's room and changing all of the detergents, she took him to a free clinic to be tested for common allergies. No replies were given. Tuesday, 3 weeks subsequent to the initial bites, was the breaking point. The school for Ethan called Sarah, who was working 2 shifts. She found her kid unresponsive after he dozed off at his workstation. Upon noticing the bites covering his arms, his instructor, Miss Johnson, promptly contacted the nurse after attempting to rouse him. With a racing heart, Sarah made a beeline toward the school. In the nurse's office, she discovered Ethan, his face marred by tears, his arms encircling Mr. Buttons in a protective embrace. Using a privacy screen, the kind school nurse, Mrs. Hernandez, had isolated them from the rest of the students. "My name is Sarah, and I've worked as a school nurse for 20 years, Mrs. Hernandez whispered. "From what I can see, they aren't your average bug bites. Both the number and pattern of them are excessive. Do they only occur at night, according to Ethan?" In spite of her tiredness, aggravation, and tears, Sarah nodded. The nurse continued by giving her a referral sheet and an indication that she should take him to the doctor. Ideally, today. "I have made a note of Dr. Peterson's contact details. Working with a low-income clinic on Maple Street, he occasionally takes on emergency situations. I must not skip any additional work," Sarah muttered. "My relationship with my supervisor is already fragile." A tender touch from Mrs. Hernandez landed on Sarah's arm. "I eagerly await this. Worryingly, Ethan's weariness is making these bites infected from scratching. I implore you to fetch him tomorrow." As Sarah observed her baby, he lay curled up on the plastic cot, his fingers tightly gripping his bear. With a deliberate motion, she retrieved her phone and dialed her supervisor's number. Without putting her work in jeopardy, she had to attend to some matters immediately. Sarah and Ethan arrived to find Dr. Peterson's waiting room bustling with patients. Sarah was barely able to afford the sliding scale fees at the Maple Street Clinic, which mostly serviced low-income families, even with her company health discount. With a clipboard brimming with paperwork, the receptionist pushed it across the counter, barely lifting her gaze from it. According to her, he will be seen as soon as we are able to reach him. It might take a few hours. Sarah could feel Ethan's weary body pressed against her calf as he leaned heavily on her. She led him to the corner where there were only 2 empty seats, close to a grizzled old man wiping his hands on a handkerchief. With his face buried in the faded fur of the teddy bear, Ethan grabbed Mr. Buttons even more tightly. It took the nurse over 3 hours to shout out Ethan's name. Too exhausted to do anything about the itching, he had dozed out by that point, resting his head on Sarah's lap. Vaccination schedules and development charts for children filled the walls of the chilly examination room, which was cramped and poorly lit. Uninvited, a frail man wearing wire-rimmed spectacles and a permanent scowl, Dr. Peterson stepped inside. Without looking up, he cast a cursory glance at the graph he was holding. "So, we're dealing with bug bites?" he inquired, his tone betraying the fact that he was occupied with more pressing matters. As Sarah assisted Ethan in taking off his shirt to show the doctor, she stated, "Yes, I think they're bedbugs, but I can't find any evidence of them in our apartment." About 3 weeks ago, they began, and now they're worsening. As his scowl deepened, Dr. Peterson knelt down to inspect the bites. Ethan grimaced as he poked one of the irritated spots with a gloved finger. "Mrs. Miller, how frequently do you wash his sheets?" he inquired. "It's Miss, and I've been washing everything every day since this started," Sarah said, her voice gradually becoming more defensive. "I've searched his entire room and attempted every home remedy imaginable. I work at Springfield General as a nursing assistant. Protocols for personal cleanliness are something I am familiar with." As the doctor scrolled over Ethan's data on his tablet, he made a sound that wasn't quite definitive. "According to this, you just relocated." "We moved in 3 weeks ago, albeit the flat had been vacant for some time before to that. I made sure to clean everything well." As Ethan held on to the teddy bear, Dr. Peterson's gaze shifted to it. "Where does that leave us? Is the surface clean?" Sarah was hesitant. Since he was 4 years old, he has had Mr. Buttons. "I give it a quick spot cleaning, but he really values it. His father gave it to him as a final present before he passed away." There was a hardening of Dr. Peterson's expression. "Stuffed animals are a perfect hiding place for bedbugs, Miss Miller. Without food, they can survive for months. Dealing with this problem will persist unless you address all possible ecosystems." "Bugs? I've searched high and low. Our apartment is devoid of them. They are still there even though you can't see them." Dr. Peterson let out a deep breath. "The infected bites will be treated with an antibiotic cream, and the itching will be alleviated with antihistamines. However, eliminating the infestation is the true remedy. As a result, you might have to re-evaluate your living situation and the things you own." Ethan refocused his intense gaze on Mr. Buttons, and Sarah could feel his firm hold on the bear tighten. His tone changed to something that made Sarah nervous, but he proceeded nevertheless, saying that resources are accessible. Assistance programs that can be of use to families that are experiencing difficulties securing suitable homes. Sarah tensed up. "Our living quarters are more than sufficient, Dr. Peterson. An insect problem is all we're dealing with." He added one more jot to the graph. "Legally, I must disclose any suspicions of child endangerment. Miss Miller, it could be seen as careless to let a serious infestation persist without taking action." The blood drained from Sarah's face. "Is the fact that my son has insect bites grounds for you to threaten to contact CPS? I'm informing you of my professional obligations," he said with a level head. "An infestation of this magnitude indicates a potentially dangerous living situation. I think it's critical that you fix it right away." Sarah helped dress Ethan while holding back tears of shame and rage as she shook hands with him and took his shirt. "I'll take care of our house problem while we complete the prescription," she added firmly. The prescription slip was presented to her by Dr. Peterson. "Miss Miller, I will be returning your call on this matter. Any good news would be much appreciated." Sarah drove home in complete silence, her knuckles white from the wheel. No exterminator would be affordable for her. Their emergency fund had already been used for remedies and the trip to the clinic by her. The doctor had previously been unable to identify the insects that had bit Ethan, and now she was threatening to have him removed from his family. After 3 days, a well-dressed woman came to their residence and rapped on the door. Kimberly Taylor, a representative from Child Protective Services, spoke in an impartial, business-like tone to identify herself and explain that she was checking in on a health report. In their cramped structure, Word spread quickly. When Sarah saw them in the hallway one evening, she saw Mrs. Wilson, who lived next door, rush inside. When Ethan returned home from school the next morning, he was visibly distressed. He had been informed by Jason Perkins that no one should play with him because of unclean bugs. Frank, a big man, spent 4 hours examining Sarah and her flat for pests, and Sarah spent her whole income on his services that weekend. He too did not discover any signs of bedbugs. Even after treating for fleas and mites, which he suspected might be the problem, nothing changed. As Frank gathered his tools, he added, "I'm not sure what to tell you, ma'am. Never in my 20 years of observation have I seen such large bites without first identifying the insect that made them. They appear like spectres. Insects that bit just Ethan, ghost bugs. Bugs that, if Sarah couldn't eradicate them, would have cost Sarah her son." Sitting on the side of her bed, she sobbed quietly enough to not disturb Ethan that night, the first time she had done so since Michael's funeral. She let him sleep in her room as he was too scared to sleep in his own. No solace was found for the Miller household in the weeks that followed. Sarah had set up powerful lights in Ethan's room and left them on continuously throughout the night in the vain hope that they might ward off whatever was biting her kid. She had bought a second-hand mattress for him, a floor model with a little tear, from the manager of the furniture store for half price, using funds they did not have. She had gone to such lengths as to show Miss Taylor from CPS around their apartment, highlighting all the safety features she had installed. The social worker had commented, "I can see you're trying, Miss Miller," while jotting down notes on her tablet. On the other hand, Ethan's medical records show that his condition is getting worse. His teacher has noticed that he hasn't been paying attention in class, and he has skipped 6 days in the last month. With a hint of annoyance in her voice, Sarah had retorted that he has trouble sleeping at night. "Something I can't identify is biting him. This place has seen 2 visits from exterminators I've scrubbed until my palms are peeling. Can you tell me what else I should do?" While Miss Taylor's comments were still strong, her countenance had softened ever so little. "Is the possibility that it's a medical issue rather than an infestation anything you've thought about? Maybe it's a skin condition or an allergy." It was a recommendation Sarah was already familiar with. She had discussed it with a dermatologist who had diagnosed the bites as being caused by insects after examining them. They went without fresh produce for a week due to the copay for that visit. Even Ethan's once perfect attendance record was broken by the 6th week of their misery. Constant pain and insomnia had reduced his appetite, caused him to lose weight, and dark circles had developed into half-moons beneath his eyes. Even though the antibiotic cream Dr. Peterson gave Ethan helped with the infections, it did little to stop additional bites from emerging, and the antihistamines left him so sleepy that he had trouble paying attention in class when he was there. Sarah was also not performing up to par at work. 3 times in the last month, she was tardy and had to personally drop Ethan off at school because he was too tired to wake up on his own after oversleeping his alarm. Ellen, her boss, had summoned her to the office for a meeting to discuss her dependability. Ellen told Sarah, "You know I value you as an employee," in a tone that struggled to strike a balance between kind and businesslike. "We must adhere to the hospital's guidelines, though. Patients rely on constant treatment, thus personnel being late to shifts is unacceptable." Sarah had responded, "I get it," but the words had a bitter aftertaste in her tongue. This will not occur once again. As she spent her nights either caring for Ethan or studying obscure parasites on her phone until her eyes burned, she knew it was a promise she might not be able to keep while he was suffering. Sarah found a blog post regarding strange bug infestations while doing one of these late-night research sessions. The writer, Dr. Rebecca Chang, was supposedly an entomologist who focused on parasitic insects at the University Natural History Museum. The essay covered instances of unexplained bites that traditional pest management methods were unable to address. Sarah felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in weeks because of something in the meticulous, contemplative writing. Even without an appointment, Sarah had no clue if Dr. Chang would even talk to her at the museum, which was across town. Time and choices were becoming increasingly scarce for her. It was Sarah's suspicion that the house visit that Miss Taylor had planned for the week after Ethan's release would decide his fate in her care. The museum reopened to the public the following Saturday. Sarah prepared a lunch for Ethan, gave him an antihistamine to alleviate his itching, and then drove the half-hour to the big brick structure that featured billboards advertising a new prehistoric display. Are the dinosaurs our main attraction? Through the monotony of his continual state of exhaustion, Ethan managed to muster a glimmer of his former enthusiasm and asked. Sarah squeezed his hand and suggested they meet later. A bug scientist is on staff, so Mommy must first consult with her. If she can, she might be able to alleviate your bites. They were led by the information desk to a modest office in the research wing, which was located away from the public exhibits. Sarah encountered a middle-aged Asian woman in a lab coat examining something under a microscope, with her office door ajar, instead of the locked door or secretary she had anticipated. "Excuse me," Sarah mumbled. "Is that you, Dr. Cheng? Unusual bug bites were the subject of your online article." As the woman raised her spectacles to her crown, she raised her gaze upwards. After Sarah, she looked across at Ethan, her gaze fixed on the prominent scars on his neck. "I am," she said, as getting to her feet. "By the way, the dinosaur display isn't why you came, is it?" In response, Sarah shook her head in disapproval. "After nearly 2 months of itching, my son still hasn't figured out what bit him. They continue to worsen, and no one has been able to pinpoint their source. Similar situations were discussed in your essay." The chairs across from Dr. Cheng's desk were indicated by her motion. "Take a seat, please. Please start at the beginning and tell me everything." Ethan spent the next 20 minutes playing calmly with Mr. Buttons in the office, periodically scratching at his arms despite the medication, while Sarah described their story. Without interrupting, Dr. Cheng took notes every so often. Finally, she clarified that the bites only happen at night. Constantly following the same routines. Typically, they appear on his back, neck, and arms in clusters or lines. "Can I look at them?" Partially addressing Sarah and Ethan directly, Dr. Cheng questioned. Before turning to his mother, who gave an encouraging gesture, Ethan glanced up at the scientist. Still holding on to his teddy bear, he approached with caution. As she delicately checked the bite marks on Ethan's arms, Dr. Cheng remarked, "That's a very nice bear. Is his name known?" Ethan spoke softly in response to Mr. Buttons. His father passed him on to me before he ascended to heaven. A brief expression of recognition, swiftly concealed, flashed across Dr. Cheng's face. "His friendliness is commendable. Will you be sharing your bed with Mr. Buttons tonight?" Nodding, Ethan gave the signal. "Each and every night. I am shielded from monsters by his arm." The examination performed by Dr. Cheng was meticulous and sensitive. Asking Ethan whether any particular spots ached or itched more than others, she examined the bite marks under a tiny magnifying glass. She made sure Ethan wasn't scared by taking multiple pictures with a tiny digital camera while explaining everything. "Miss Miller, would you let me take a few samples?" she asked at last. A little fabric sample from Ethan's pajamas and sheets, together with some tape applied to the bite locations to gather any microscopic evidence, would suffice. Nothing intrusive. Sarah quickly agreed, of course, in any way that could be useful. "We can return home with all the necessary items for you." It was clear that Dr. Cheng disagreed. "In fact, I was wishing I could drop by your place. Important context could be revealed by seeing the surroundings." Sarah interjected with a voice that was stronger than it had been in weeks, expressing her strong objection to the imposition. "Would love to have you here. What time works for you? Today, I will go off at 5. Are you available in the early evening?" With a repressed expression of relief, Sarah nodded. At last, they felt like someone was paying attention and was willing to lend a hand without passing judgment. While exchanging contact details, Sarah observed Dr. Cheng's pondering expression as her eyes kept going back to Mr. Buttons. Dr. Cheng showed up at their apartment complex that evening at precisely 5:30 with a leather bag full of equipment. Mrs. Wilson, her elderly neighbor, hurried inside her own apartment after politely nodding at her in the hallway. Sarah reassured him. "Don't mind her," as she pushed open the door. "Like everyone in the building is convinced we're sick with the plague." Dr. Cheng's expression was one of empathy. What terrifies people is the unknown. It's very normal and quite human. Their apartment inspection by the scientists was unique compared to others. Dr. Cheng, in her detective-like approach, noticed subtleties that others had missed, while the exterminator had concentrated on typical hiding places for identified bugs. She spent a good chunk of time in the restroom examining the drains, checked the air vents, and used a magnifying glass to examine the window screens. "You've done an excellent job keeping this area tidy," she said. "Panic ensues and additional mayhem ensues when most individuals cope with unexplained bites." "You have been quite meticulous," Sarah said. "My training as a nurse," as she observed the scientist open her bag of supplies. "Systematically approaching problems is something we learn in school." With a nod of approval, Dr. Cheng prepared little vials and slides for collection. "We can benefit from that same strategy right now. Would you be able to tell me how Ethan gets ready for bed and where he sleeps?" After Ethan found his own room too scary to sleep in, they went to Sarah's bedroom. Seated on the side of the bed with Mr. Buttons in his lap, Jack listened intently as Sarah described their evening routine: bathing, brushing teeth, reading a story, and finally, lights out. "I thought Mr. Buttons was with you at all times." Directly, Dr. Cheng questioned Ethan. He gave a serious nod. "Leaving him alone makes him lonely." "Without a doubt," Dr. Cheng concurred. "Will he let me see him for a second?" After some hesitation, Ethan reluctantly relinquished his beloved teddy bear. Examining the faded cloth, patched patches, and the missing button eye that had given the bear his name, Dr. Cheng treated it with considerable care. She gave Mr. Buttons back to Ethan and said, "He's unique. I appreciate you arranging for me to meet him." Following this, she collected various skin swabs from the bite marks on Ethan, dust from the space between the mattress and box spring, and sheet fibers. No other investigator had been able to put Ethan at ease like she had by keeping up a dialogue with him about his hobbies and favorite school subjects throughout. Before leading her out the door, Sarah made sure to talk softly so that Ethan, who was sketching at the kitchen table, wouldn't overhear while she gathered all of her supplies. "Is there anything you can think of that could be causing this?" Her voice betrayed her frantic desire as she inquired. There was contemplation on Dr. Cheng's face. "I need to test these samples in the lab to confirm my theory, though. I can assure you that these are most certainly bites from insects and not any sort of skin disorder or allergic reaction. Both the pattern and the inflammation are really particular." Sarah said, "That's what I've been saying all along," before deeply inhaling. "If they are bites from insects, then why haven't the bugs been located?" Dr. Cheng said that some parasites are extremely adept at evading detection. Even though they've adapted over millions of years to stay undetected, they always leave some kind of trace, no matter how small. "I will have some responses ready for you in around 48 hours. "Thank you," Sarah said, her heartfelt gratitude going beyond words. "You've paid close attention to what we had to say, unlike anybody else." With her palm resting on the doorframe, Dr. Cheng halted. "Excuse me, Miss Miller, but I have a really private question." The fact that Ethan's father had died was brought up. By any chance, was Michael Miller his name? Sarah surprised herself and blinked. "Indeed. How were you aware of that?" Dr. Cheng felt a shadow move across his face. "It is only an educated assumption based on your surname. For his son to have such warm feelings for him, he must have been extraordinary." With a familiar tightness in her chest, Sarah confirmed that he was. "Even though we lost him when he was just 4 years old, Ethan recalls every detail of him." Her expression was unreadable. Dr. Cheng nodded. She left Sarah with more questions than answers and a sense of hope she hadn't experienced in weeks, but also with the promise to call her as soon as the results were in. An unforeseen shift took place the following day. When Ethan awoke, he saw that he had not sustained any new bite marks since the bites began. Sarah, still reeling from their good fortune, examined his entire body. Ethan, forcing a faint grin, speculated that perhaps Dr. Cheng had scared them away. "She's the bug world's superhero. I don't want to raise my expectations too high," Sarah agreed, "but maybe." Even though it was only a night without bites, it lifted their spirits as they got ready for the day ahead. Sarah even got Ethan to school on time, and she showed up to work free of the worry and tiredness that had been following her around like a fog. Dr. Cheng called her shortly after lunch, shattering her cautious optimism. Unlike in their earlier encounters, the scientist's voice was frantic and uncontrolled. "It is imperative that we meet with you and Ethan without delay, Miss Miller. Something alarming has come to light in my laboratory experiments." Sarah felt sick to her stomach. "Please tell me, how much did you uncover? Have a face-to-face meeting instead. In what time would it take you to reach the museum?" "I had to pick up Ethan from after-school care after working until 4. After 5 minutes, we could reach the location." "Indeed, that is going to be effective." "Please, Miss Miller, bring Mr. Buttons with you," Dr. Cheng continued after he paused for a moment before inviting Miss Miller to come straight to his office. Sarah remained fixated on her phone when the call abruptly ended. There was no way that the link to Ethan's teddy bear was accidental. Whatever Dr. Cheng had found related their son's last present from Michael in some way. Her vertigo was brought on by the fear that raced through her. While Sarah continued her shift, her thoughts raced with possibilities, some more terrifying than the others, and she went through her duties mechanically. She had reached her breaking point when she picked up Ethan from after-school care. "Can we expect to see the lady with the bugs again?" As they made their way to the museum, Ethan inquired. "Yes, my darling." Sarah cast a quick peek in the rearview mirror at him, and she possessed some knowledge of your bites. "I asked that you bring Mr. Buttons. Have you done so?" The little boy nodded as he raised the teddy bear. "This time he wants to know if we'll be able to view the dinosaurs." A smile escaped Sarah's lips. "Hey, we'll have to see. Dr. Cheng must be consulted first." A typically neat desk was now cluttered with paperwork, microscope slides, and multiple sealed plastic containers as Dr. Cheng awaited their arrival in her office. The scientist got to her feet the second Sarah and Ethan walked in, her countenance grave but resolute. To ensure their privacy, she shut the door after pointing to the seats she had set up. "She thanked you," her voice restrained, "for arriving so swiftly. Please believe me when I say that Ethan's situation has a solution before I reveal my findings. Although it will necessitate tough choices, we can find a solution to this." As Sarah felt Ethan's hand on Mr. Button's chest, she also felt his pressure against her side. She shielded his shoulders with her arm. Her voice was more composed than she felt as she pleaded with the person to clarify the situation. "For far too long, we have been unaware." Dr. Cheng drew her chair nearer to them as she nodded. "The samples I took showed that a parasite bug called Triatoma infestans was present, Miss Miller. Although it can bite anywhere on a human body, the kissing bug gets its name from the fact that it bites people most frequently around the mouth and face." To let them see through the transparent plastic, she grabbed one of the sealed canisters from her desk and held it aloft. Within, there appeared to be a small brown dot, so small that it could hardly be seen with the human eye. "This person is responsible. No one has been able to spot them since they are incredibly little when they are juvenile, even smaller than most nighttime bedbugs. The bite patterns resemble the marks on Ethan's skin, and they feed on blood." With her eyes narrowed, Sarah peered down at the container. Why did the exterminators fail to see them entirely? They looked for hours as Dr. Cheng delicately laid the container down. She explained why. They should have been searching elsewhere. With purpose, she shifted her gaze to Mr. Button, who was in Ethan's embrace. When the implication hit Sarah, she gasped for air. "You mean they're in his stuffed animal?" Dr. Cheng gave a serious nod. "These parasites were abundant in the fabric sample I obtained from Mr. Button. Inside the stuffing, they've set up a colony that comes out at night to feed and then goes back to hiding. Due to its thick fabric and padding, the bear is able to create its ideal dark and warm habitat." Astonishment and wide eyes filled Ethan's as he gazed down at his cherished teddy bear. "I am in pain because of Mr. Button." His voice quivered as if he were about to cry. Sarah swiftly assured him, "No, my darling," as she drew him nearer. "Who is to blame?" "Not Mr. Button." Microscopic insects that sneaked inside his stuffing went unnoticed. Leaning forward, Dr. Cheng addressed Ethan by name. I couldn't agree with your mum more. It is never Mr. Button's intention to cause you harm. All these bugs are doing is hiding on him. Your bear isn't the one biting you, it's them. Lower lip trembled on Ethan's part. Is it possible to eliminate them? Is Mr. Buttons okay with you? Sarah and the scientist locked eyes, the weight of the unspoken truth pressing down on them. It was clear that Dr. Cheng deliberated over her word choice. These bugs, Ethan, are notoriously difficult to eradicate once they've established themselves. They hide their eggs in fabric so thoroughly that not even the most thorough cleaning will remove them all. Although we may be able to treat Mr. Buttons, there is always the possibility that some bugs may survive and continue causing you harm. As Sarah observed her son's eyes well up with tears, she could feel the crushing weight of the terrible decision weighing on his little face. It was as if her own soul were being ripped apart. So, are you implying that we should dispose of Mr. Buttons? Tears were streaming down Ethan's face as he whispered. The doctor, Dr. Cheng, let out a frustrated blow. The infestation could be eradicated with absolute certainty in that manner. Her eyes darted to Sarah as she paused to gather more information before making a final decision. Insects of this kind are rare in this region. Usually seen in South America, they seldom make the journey north on a hitchhiker. I couldn't understand how they managed to get their hands on your teddy bear. Scarlett scowled. After our move, we shopped for used furniture. Did they possibly emerge from that? Maybe, but probably not. Fabric and stuffing are more appealing to these bugs than metal and wood. I think they were brought over by Mr. Button himself. The countenance of Dr. Cheng shifted to one of contemplation. You said your spouse died when Ethan was 4 years old, Miss Miller. I was wondering if he ever went on business trips, especially to South America. Confusion turned to dawning comprehension as Sarah stared at her. Yes, Michael did photograph wildlife. He had been assigned a task in Brazil just before the catastrophe. On that journey, he returned Mr. Buttons for Ethan. She sounded unsure. It seems like the bugs have been living in the bear ever since. For an entire decade? I can really see it happening. Parasitic insects have the ability to stay inactive for long periods of time when the environment isn't conducive to feeding or reproducing. I found a creature that can go months without eating blood. Your recent relocation to a new apartment, a shift in the weather, or some other event must have set them off. With her palm trembling from the weight of the consequences, Sarah ran her fingers through her hair. Michael's most beloved property, the last present he gave to his son, had turned into a burden, but it also served as a link to a father he had no recollection of. Where do we begin? With a barely audible voice, she inquired. From Sarah, Dr. Cheng stole a quick glimpse at Ethan, who was sitting quietly crying. You two clearly place a high value on Mr. Buttons. I think it would be best to treat the bear first. He would undergo a series of treatments, including specialized heat and chemicals, after which he would be encased in a protective shell to keep any remaining insects from escaping. Would that be harmful to Mr. Button? Ethan inquired in a low voice. On the other hand, Dr. Cheng did concede that he might transform somewhat thereafter. Because his stuffing could be damaged by the heat, he should remain in the protective case. Although you shouldn't sleep with him, you can still see him and hold him close. Sarah was overwhelmed with appreciation for the woman who saw beyond the teddy animal and saw its value as a meaningful keepsake from a loved one they had lost. As Dr. Cheng proceeded, her tone changed somewhat. She mentioned something else. A complete treatment of the unit is required. Although the main colony is in the bear, you might find that some of the insects have moved to other places, such as your bedding, furniture, or even the walls surrounding Ethan's bed. A professional cleaning of the entire room is what I would suggest. Sarah's little respite quickly dissipated. Another exterminator is out of my price range. The most recent two almost depleted our savings before they even discovered the issue. Dr. Cheng volunteered to connect you with people in the university's entomology department who could be able to assist. For study reasons, they occasionally offer discounted services. Without a doubt, this case would pique their scientific curiosity. With Mr. Button's hand firmly in his, Ethan sat silently as they planned the details. During a brief break in speech, he raised an eyebrow and met Dr. Cheng's red-rimmed gaze. Dr. Cheng, I've never been bitten by bugs before. When I was younger, I slept with Mr. Button. It was a perceptive question, and Sarah had been bothered by it. The scientist acknowledged the insight with a nod. You have raised a very valid point there, Ethan. Environmental factors have a significant impact on these bugs. Their dormancy in your previous apartment may have been caused by factors such as the temperature, humidity, or even the presence of certain household chemicals. Those circumstances become active once you relocated because they altered. Her gaze shifted to Sarah. Can you tell me when the bite first began? In what time frame did you complete the relocation? 4 or 5 days, Sarah remembered. I initially saw the bites on his ankle on Wednesday after we relocated on a weekend. A notation was made by Dr. Cheng. The timing is in line with my thinking. The colony was piqued by the environmental shift. Looking thoughtful, she spoke softly. What is directly underneath your apartment, Miss Miller? Are you aware? Our apartment sits beneath the building's boiler room. Why? The ideal circumstances for these insects to flourish may have been provided by the heat rising from below. Their ideal habitat is a warm and humid one. Dr. Cheng started to collect her tools. If it's okay with you, I'd like to start treating Mr. Button right away. We need to take action quickly so that Ethan can obtain some relief. Sarah glanced across at her kid, who had now had a calm, resigned expression on his face. What are your thoughts on this, Ethan? Would it be wise to allow Dr. Cheng to assist Mr. Button? Subtly, Ethan gave a nod. Might it injure him? Dr. Cheng reassured him that he would feel nothing and that you are welcome to drop by my lab at any time to see him as he undergoes treatment. Even though he was clearly reluctant, Ethan reluctantly gave the scientist his cherished teddy. He pleaded with her to exercise caution around him. In my absence, he experiences fear. With serious reverence, Dr. Cheng took the teddy bear. Rest assured, Ethan, I will provide him with the utmost care. Someone capable is handling Mr. Buttons. Sarah observed a peculiar change in her expression as she meticulously wrapped the bear in its container. A fleeting glimpse of recognition or memory was swiftly concealed by her intense concentration on the task at hand. While fastening the lid, Dr. Cheng mentioned that there was one more matter he would want to address. The study team from the university who will be treating your apartment has to document this case. Samples and images would be greatly appreciated if you could provide them permission. Naturally, we would keep your identities secret. Sarah cautioned that they may document anything they wanted as long as it helped eliminate the bugs. When will they begin? Tomorrow will be taken care of. As a minimum, you and Ethan should leave the residence for 8 hours to complete their task. Where can you find a place to stay? Sarah considered her mother in Cleveland, a city too distant to visit in a single day. Sarah was too proud to accept her co-worker Lisa's sofa offer the first time around. Pride seemed like a frivolous indulgence now that Ethan's safety was at risk. She reassured Dr. Cheng that they will find a solution. Could we meet up later on? Is there any place else we could stay? Dr. Cheng thought about this. The removal of Mr. Buttons has effectively contained the major colony. I think spending one more night in your apartment would be fine, but instead of sleeping in his usual spot, I think you should wash all of Ethan's sheets in hot water and put him to bed in your room. Dr. Cheng gave Sarah her personal card, which included her mobile phone number on the back, as they were getting ready to depart. If any new symptoms appear, or if you have any questions, feel free to call me at any time. Mr. Button's treatment will be reported to you tomorrow. Sarah fastened Ethan's booster seat in the parking lot, and he remained unusually silent during the process. It looked as though a physical emptiness had been created by the departure of his regular companion. His fidgety fingers fiddled with his seatbelt material in an anxious manner. Sarah reassured him. My darling, he will be all right, even though her own heart broke for her troubled son. He will be well taken care of by Dr. Cheng. Who will watch over me this evening? Ethan whispered. In every case, Mr. Buttons manages to ward off nightmares. Squeezing his knee, Sarah extended her arm backwards. My friend, I will. No more nightmares. Mummy will keep them at bay tonight. While driving home, Sarah swallowed her pride and called Lisa to inquire about staying the following day for treatment. So that Sarah wouldn't miss work, her co-worker readily agreed, and even offered to pick up Ethan from school. Prior to Ethan's bedtime that night, Sarah made sure their bedding was spotless and fed him his favorite macaroni and cheese. He appeared more little and defenseless without Mr. Buttons. Her voice was gentle as she urged him to try to sleep while she ran her fingers through his hair. "We shall have a better day tomorrow." Ethan was getting close to sleep, and his voice was low. "Mum, is it possible that Dad was aware that Mr. Buttons had bugs when he gave him to me?" Sarah was taken aback by the question. "Yeah, honey. Without knowing the potential harm it could do, your dad would never have given you that. You were his first and foremost love." In a hushed tone, Ethan expressed his want for his lover. "Mr. Buttons was also someone I missed." "Listen, darling, I understand. We both miss him." Sarah refused to identify the him she was referring about. Maybe there was no significance. The same profound aching was left by both absences. She remained by Ethan's side until he began to breathe more deeply, at which point she stealthily made her way to the living room to contact Child Protective Services Miss Taylor. After 3 rings, the social worker's professional but fatigued voice responded. "Dear Miss Taylor, my name is Sarah Miller. Just wanted to give you a heads up about Ethan. Tomorrow we will begin treating the bites that we have located." It was clear that the social worker was relieved. "Your news is greatly appreciated, Miss Miller. How did they come to be?" Sarah presented the results of Dr. Chang's study without touching on the personal relevance of Mr. Buttons. Rather, her attention was drawn to the realistic aspects of their apartment treatment plan, the specific operation for the teddy bear, and the subsequent care for Ethan's bites. According to Miss Taylor, this is just the type of settlement that was desired. Your progress in resolving the health issue will be documented in your case file. We can use next week's appointment as a check-in rather than an evaluation. Sarah allowed herself a brief moment of intense relief after terminating the call. With this obstacle removed, she would continue to care for Ethan. Their little apartment was now hauntingly silent without Ethan's laughter or the sight of Mr. Buttons on the couch, but she couldn't escape the impression that their struggle was far from finished as she looked about. Unidentified individuals in hazmat suits would descend upon their home tomorrow to investigate and record its every inch. Another school day would pass without Ethan's reassuring friend, who had been there for him emotionally through all the changes of the previous 3 years. The unnerving link between the insects, Michael's last journey, and the present he had selected for his kid remained hidden beneath all of this. Bringing her legs up to her chest, Sarah found a comfortable position on the couch. She finally gave in to the cruel irony of Michael's betrayal of his beloved son, even in his dying act of love, and she felt it for the first time since Dr. Chang's disclosure. Sarah and Ethan reached an unanticipated breaking point the week after that. The university team showed up on time and turned their abode into a makeshift hazardous waste site, covering furniture with plastic and humming specialized equipment in every room. Marcus, a PhD student and head technician, had apologized for the interruption but was adamant about being thorough. He had shown Sarah microscopic pictures of the insects they had previously gathered, Triatoma infestans, and explained that these little organisms are tough. Their eggs are practically undetectable, and they can squeeze into spaces little bigger than the edge of a credit card. On that particular day, Sarah and Ethan had visited Lisa's flat, where Ethan sat quietly and uninterested, nibbling on the sandwich that Lisa had prepared for him. They came home that night to an apartment that reeked of chemicals and was spotlessly clean in every way. Extensive instructions had been left by Marcus. For the next 3 days, wash all textiles again, keep an eye out for any symptoms of fresh bites, and keep windows open whenever possible. Ethan was so worn out from the stress and the antihistamines that he dozed off fast that night. Sarah had listened to his breaths like a prayer, noting each inhalation and exhalation until she fell asleep as well. There were no new bites or itching this morning, so I was cautiously optimistic. The only things that remained were the lingering chemical scent and the noticeable lack of Mr. Buttons. "Will it be possible to visit him today?" While stirring his cereal with the milk for breakfast, Ethan had asked. "We were told by Dr. Chang that we may come see him any time we liked." Upon reaching Dr. Chang's office that afternoon, Sarah and her friend were met with tragic news instead of reassurance about their pledge to visit the museum after school. Sarah would later come to regret this decision. Grinning gravely, Dr. Chang told them that the treatment had been more difficult than expected. The infestation had spread throughout the bear's stuffing and necessitated the removal of numerous clusters of eggs. Following her, they arrived to a workbench where a practically lifeless Mr. Buttons lay. His once plush coat had become rigid and discolored from the heat treatment, and his torso had collapsed inward. The fabric was too tattered to salvage his left ear, thus there was now an additional hole where his button eye had been, giving him his name. At the sight, Ethan's face collapsed, and his little body trembled from silent weeping. As Dr. Chang went on with her explanation, Sarah held him close, feeling his sobs seep through her shirt. Sarah was so distraught about her son's death that she hardly paid attention to what he said. The scientist was stating that although the insects were gone, the damage to the bear's structural integrity was inevitable. Even if we were to use different fabric and stuffing to mimic his look, the bear would still not be the same. Ethan was still sobbing as Sarah walked him back to the car after a robotic expression of gratitude. A mist of shared grief hung over the car ride home, broken only by Ethan's hiccups as he sobbed occasionally. A fresh challenge faced them when they arrived at their apartment complex. Outside their door, the property manager, Mrs. Cooper, stood with a manila envelope in one hand and an expression of twisted disgust on her face. "Miss Miller," she proclaimed as she shoved the packet ahead. "From the administration of the building comes this formal notification. A possible infestation in your apartment has been reported, and there have been reports of authorized persons accessing the premises with hazardous equipment." With her fingers numb, Sarah accepted the envelope. "A parasite problem arose for us. That's how seriously it's being taken. However, you are obligated to notify management without delay in the event of an infestation, as stated in your lease." While Mrs. Cooper spoke, her gaze shifted to Ethan, who was standing by his mother's side, his face marred by tears, and who appeared shell-shocked. Although her voice stayed stern, her expression softened ever so slightly. "You are given 30 days to leave the property according to the notice. Are we to be evicted? However, we have resolved the issue. It is under control, according to the university team." Sarah was so shocked that her voice quivered. "Goodbye, Miss Miller. The verdict is in." While several of her neighbors have voiced worries about pests in their apartments, Mrs. Cooper was hesitant to do so. "I did my best to oppose this decision, but the owner of the building was unyielding." Sarah trembled as she shook hands with the envelope and skimmed over the legalese that verified their expulsion after she departed. Yet another relocation. They couldn't afford any further expenditure. The dissolution of their first secure dwelling after Michael's death. After all that had transpired, it was too much. In spite of Sarah's delicate tapping, Ethan had bolted inside the restroom and locked the door. She lost whatever last strength she had been holding on to when she heard his muted sobs. She sobbed into her hands as she slid down the wall outside the bathroom door. The precipitous deterioration in Ethan's health started that night. Both supper and breakfast the following day were turned down by him. As he struggled to fall asleep, dark circles appeared under his eyes. His body would jolt awake every time he felt himself drifting off, and his hands would seek out for something familiar that was gone. Sarah attempted to lull him back to sleep around 3 in the morning, but he mumbled, "I can't sleep without Mr. Buttons." And so it began. When he's not around, the creatures return. The 3rd day passed, and Ethan's school contacted him. Once again he dozed off at his desk and remained unresponsive for almost 10 minutes. He felt dizzy and queasy as he regained consciousness. Quick medical assistance was advised by the school nurse. In spite of Ellen's worried inquiries, Sarah bolted from her desk and made a beeline for the school. In the nurse's office, Ethan sat distant and pallid, his bag a makeshift replacement for his beloved bear. With whispered voices, the nurse whisked Sarah away. "I would prefer that his blood pressure be higher, but his temperature is somewhat higher." "Is his eating schedule consistent?" Sarah confessed, her face flushed with embarrassment, that he hadn't. "Lately, he has experienced a great deal. Yes, We have both. The nurse looked worried yet caring. Miss Miller, I believe he should consult a physician. It is not typical for a youngster his age to have this degree of exhaustion and these vital signs. Sarah felt right at home in the emergency room of Springfield General. Being on the opposite side of the registration desk seemed strange, even though she worked there 3 days a week. She felt even more inadequate as her co-workers looked at her in astonishment and muttered questions while she completed Ethan's papers. She was immediately recognized by one of their doctors, Dr. Martinez, who accelerated Ethan's triage. Gently but efficiently, he examined Ethan and found that he was extremely exhausted, had little appetite, and had a racing heart. So, according to you, this all began following the teddy bear's demise. Ethan gazed blankly at the cartoon playing on the television in the treatment room, while Sarah nodded and explained the problem in a quiet voice. Dr. Martinez said that people shouldn't undervalue the psychological toll that losing a familiar item might take. However, these bodily signs point to something else. He should be kept for observation while I take his blood. Is he still getting bit? Sarah denied it. The pests appear to be gone after the treatment. Dr. Martinez sent the patient to the pediatric ward for overnight observation, along with 4 orders, a complete blood test, fluids, and admittance. Sitting next to Ethan's hospital bed, Sarah watched as the nurses attached monitors and adjusted his shape. She then called Ellen to let her know she wouldn't be returning to her shift. "Am I ill, Mother?" With a scared little voice, Ethan inquired. "It's only that you're exhausted, my darling. You will feel better with the help of the doctors." Even though the hospital room was chilly, Sarah felt his hair and saw that it clung to his forehead from perspiration. After 3 hours, the results of the blood test were returned. Dr. Martinez studied them with a scowl on his face before requesting a private meeting with Sarah. While they were outside of Ethan's room, he handed her the results of the test. He elaborated that Ethan's blood work indicates a parasite illness. That's out of the ordinary, especially for this area. Is he currently on a foreign trip? Sarah firmly stated no, her thoughts racing. However, according to Dr. Chang, the insects that bit him were Triatoma something, hailing from the Americas. The look on Dr. Martinez's face hardened. Infestans triatoma? The parasite infection known as Chagas disease can enter the bloodstream through bite wounds, and those people are carriers of the disease. In certain regions of South America, it is common, but not here. As Sarah took this all in, the room tilted. Did those bugs infect him with something, or did they only bite him? The doctor has confirmed that it seems that way. We must promptly begin administering him medication to combat parasites. If not treated, Chagas illness can progress to a chronic state and impact the digestive and cardiac systems. With every fresh revelation, Sarah's feelings of shame and terror submerged her further. Would he be all right? Given that cancer was detected at an early stage, the prognosis is good with the right therapy. However, in order to administer the medication and track his reaction, he will have to remain in the hospital for a minimum of 1 week. The medical facility for a week. Their medical expenses were too high. At home you'll find an eviction notice. In the midst of it all, a little boy wrestles with a parasite in his blood, still haunted by the anguish of losing his most beloved item. From the hospital waiting room, Sarah contacted Dr. Chang, her voice quivering as she communicated the diagnosis. The scientist's disbelief could be heard. Chronic hepatitis? With a hint of remorse in her voice, she admitted that she should have thought about that possibility. Trypanosoma cruzi, a parasite that these insects carry, can be transmitted while they feed. Getting rid of the bugs was my only concern. Sarah, who was beginning to rub her temple in anticipation of a headache, announced that Ethan would be hospitalized for a minimum of 1 week. Additionally, our residence was evicted from us. Dr. Chang, everything is crumbling. On the other end of the telephone there was complete quiet. I was hoping to drop by the hospital tomorrow, Miss Miller, if that works for you. Something concerning Ethan's dad needs to be discussed with you, and it might be pertinent to your predicament. Too tired to process this unexpected turn of events, Sarah scowled. And Michael? Where does he stand? Dr. Chang said it's tricky. Plus, I prefer to explain things face to face. Prioritize Ethan at this time. Tomorrow morning I will be present. That night, as Ethan slept in the hospital bed, Sarah slept in the awkward recliner next to him, keeping an eye on his every breath and movement. The first dosage of medication to perhaps destroy the parasites circulating in his small body was delivered carefully by the four. Ethan moaned and yearned for a teddy bear that had long since vanished while he slept. Sarah knelt down and whispered comforting words as she worried about her son's future and how they would finally reach safety. A battered leather bag that appeared to be at least a decade old accompanied Dr. Chang when he arrived at Springfield General Hospital. With her red-rimmed eyes and hair tied back in a haphazard ponytail, Sarah, who had hardly slept, met her in the cramped pediatric unit waiting area. After a restless night of tossing and turning, Ethan's body gave in to tiredness and went to sleep. "Where is he?" Asking with a low, worried voice, Dr. Chang inquired. After Sarah remarked that the scientists needed to find a peaceful area of the waiting room because the medicine was making him sick to his stomach, the physicians assured her that it was effective. "He seems to be feeling better now. In order to finish the first cycle of treatment, they want to keep him for 5 more days. Dr. Chang's countenance was solemn as she nodded. Untreated Chagas disease might progress to a dangerous stage. You were quick to get him assistance. In a scathing tone, Sarah expressed her disapproval of the doctors who had ignored us for weeks. The briefcase was her point of emphasis. "Michael was mentioned in your message. My spouse has no business being involved in any of this, as far as I can see." She moved with deliberateness as the scientist set the briefcase on the little table in the middle of them. "Given all that you and Ethan have been through, Miss Miller, I know the truth may be painful to hear, but I think you deserve to hear it." A knot of anxiety formed in Sarah's gut. "Tell me, please." "I knew your husband," Dr. Chang replied in a simple manner. "About 5 years ago, we collaborated on a biodiversity documenting project in the Amazon basin of Brazil as part of the Natural History Museum's partnership with National Geographic. It was a brief but fruitful time for us both." Uncertainty turned to astonishment as Sarah fixed her gaze on her. "Mike was someone you were familiar with. For whatever reason, you remained silent upon our initial encounter. At first, I had my doubts. It didn't seem like a coincidence that Miller is a common name. I noticed the bear's unique stitching, and Dr. Chang paused when Ethan brought up his father gifting him Mr. Buttons before he went to heaven. I knew it was an artisanal creation from the Brazilian community where our group had stayed for our research." She gingerly retrieved a manila folder from the briefcase. "Following our last discussion, I reviewed some archival documents pertaining to that mission. There it is." Sarah was given a picture by her. It depicted a gathering of individuals gathered outside a seemingly rural research station, enveloped in thick vegetation. Michael Younger stood in the middle of the circle, his beard gracing his face as his signature smile illuminated it. Dr. Chang, who was younger, stood beside him. The scientist stated softly that this was our research team. Michael was recording the journey for the National Geographic magazine. His ability to interact with local populations and his photographic skills were both exceptional. As a sore spot in her chest began to ache, Sarah stroked her finger over Michael's face in the photo. That task brought him much joy. Dr. Chang's gaze shifted to hers as he gushed about the breathtaking scenery. "However, the relevance to Ethan's situation remains unclear to me." Dr. Chang inhaled deeply. Michael had a keen interest in recording the interdependence of specific indigenous groups and the local bug population throughout our excursion. Triatoma infestans and other parasitic insects were abundant in some indigenous communities' homes. Therefore, they came up with natural repellents to protect themselves. She took out a photocopy of the field notes that had been scrawled from the folder. Michael studied these cures with a local healer for many days. He was captivated by the natural botanical ingredients they utilized, which appeared to be incredibly efficient in insect repellent without causing any harm to the environment. It took Sarah a moment to catch her breath since Michael's handwriting was so instantly recognizable. Looping letters and little doodles in the margins. Michael paid a visit to the artisan community I described the day before our team was supposed to depart. The teddy bear was one of many handmade presents he bought for Ethan. Unfortunately, a local insecticide that was applied to the workshop where these products were created had failed, which neither he nor any of us had noticed. Dr. Chang's voice became more subdued. Triatoma nymphs, which are young insects that are difficult to notice, had infected the structure. Traditional methods employed by the local artisans to eradicate the insects were fruitless. The pests had instead entered a state of dormancy, hiding deep within the fabric objects, evading the pesticide's clutches. Sarah started to realize something chilly. Therefore, when Michael purchased Mr. Botton's, Dr. Chang verified that the insects were already inside, hibernating. Under more typical conditions, they would have perished on the way back to America. Michael had been studying botanical compounds, and these bugs had been exposed to them. These compounds may have unintentionally increased their strength and durability. As she tried to absorb this news, Sarah clenched her fists at her temples. Thus, these insects patiently waited for 3 years within Ethan's teddy bear. Yes, in general, when feeding conditions are unfavorable, they can enter a latent state for long periods of time. Maybe the dampness in your new flat, the heat from the boiler room below, or some other factor made it ideal for them to reawaken. Implications and linkages formed like lightning strikes in Sarah's head. Michael had a high temperature the night prior to the accident. The physicians initially diagnosed illness, but her voice became increasingly unsteady. Could he have also contracted the virus? The look on Dr. Chang's face was serious. Sure, it's doable. Fever, lethargy, and aches and pains are some of the early signs of Chagas disease. The accident could have been worsened if the situation had gone unnoticed. In a hushed tone, Sarah revealed that he slept off while driving that fateful night. There were no skid tracks or indications that he attempted to brake, according to the police. They thought he was exhausted from the lengthy journey home, but she was unable to proceed since her vision was clouded by tears. Across the table, Dr. Chang covered Sarah's hand. Amidst all the challenges you're already experiencing, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but Ethan might benefit from something more in Michael's notes. With a quick wipe, Sarah brought her focus back to the current situation. Tell me what you mean, Doctor. Chang produced an additional piece of paper, this one featuring intricate drawings of botanical and chemical elements. Michael recorded more than only repellents in his medicines. Some of these remedies dealt with the parasites themselves. He was shown by the native healer plants that, when cooked correctly, may combat the bloodstream Trypanosoma cruzi parasite. A glimmer of hope sparked in Sarah's heart. So, you're claiming that Ethan can be helped, a better option than what he is receiving from the hospital, possibly complementary, but not necessarily better. Although modern antiparasitic medications work, they come with a hefty price tag and pose serious risks, particularly to youngsters. Those side effects may be lessened with the use of these botanical ingredients, which would be an added bonus to the treatment. To Sarah, she presented the notes. These plants do, in fact, possess antiparasitic characteristics, as I was informed by an ethnobotany colleague with whom I have previously communicated. Pharmaceutical companies are even studying some of these for potential future treatments. If it is okay with you, I would want to talk to Ethan's doctors about adding a gentle extract to his treatment plan. Unbeknownst to Sarah, the pages covered with Michael's handwritten notes could one day be the key to saving his son's life. Michael had taken them half a globe away, but Sarah peered at them nevertheless. It was almost as if Michael had personally intervened in the past to save Ethan. The similarity was that significant. Oh, Michael was alert. Urgently, she inquired. In reference to the bugs inside the bear, that is. Was he even vaguely aware? As if in protest, Dr. Chang shook her head. The truth remained unknown. It wasn't until 3 further villagers fell victim to Chagas disease months after we got back that the contamination was noticed. Michael had already... She cut off the statement before she finished. A gentle tap cut them off. Standing in the doorway, a nurse signaled to Sarah. Ethan is awake and has asked to speak with you, Miss Miller. Sarah fumbled with the papers as she gathered them. He must be contacted by me. I need your help contacting his doctors regarding this treatment plan. Would you be willing to accompany me? Yes, Dr. Chang agreed. Sure thing. Ethan sat up in bed, looking diminutive against the white hospital linens when they entered his room. Upon seeing his mother, his expression briefly brightened, but it quickly became confused as he recognized Dr. Chang. "Is Mr. Buttons with you?" Looking optimistic, he inquired, his sleep-deprived voice scratchy. With a soothing demeanor, Dr. Chang made her way to his side. "No, Ethan, not today. I did, however, bring something else that could pique your attention." A tiny, leather-bound notebook was extracted from her briefcase by her. His name was on this. He made advantage of it to record the incredible sights he encountered in the jungle. Her eyes widened in Ethan's. "That was written by my dad?" "Yes, he did." Then he went on to create stunning illustrations of various animals and plants. "Do you want to view them?" With both hands he reached for the notebook, and the youngster nodded enthusiastically. His expression changed from astonishment to caring as he meticulously flipped the pages. "Mother, look!" An illustration of a rainbow-beaked bird and a monkey carrying a youngster on its back was done by Dad. Ethan respectfully traced his father's designs with his finger as Sarah perched on the side of the bed, her heart pounding with sorrow. The look on Dr. Chang's face told Ethan more than words could have said. He was starting to feel better. Sarah and Dr. Chang met with Dr. Martinez and the Chief of Pediatrics at the hospital later that afternoon to explore the alternative treatment plan. At first, the doctors were dubious and cautiously reviewed Michael's notes and the further material that Dr. Chang had provided. As Dr. Martinez reminded out, these substances lack the necessary medical approvals. It would be against the rules for us to do this. Indeed, Dr. Chang did mention that, but indigenous tribes have been using them safely for years, and initial study indicates that they do not interact negatively with Ethan's current prescription. It could be worth thinking about because his response to the conventional treatment was so severe. Dr. Eleanor Wright, Chief of Pediatrics, gave careful consideration to the papers. There are ethnobotanical methods that I've read about, especially in situations where traditional treatments result in serious adverse effects. She glanced at Sarah, and there's mounting evidence that they work. I think a closely monitored trial would be reasonable given the circumstances, but ultimately the choice would be with you, Ms. Miller, as Ethan's parent. Sarah couldn't help but notice Ethan's frail countenance, a result of both the cancer and the severe drugs he was taking to combat it. Michael had made discoveries in a faraway jungle, she reflected, and he had no idea that his journal entries would one day reach his kid. She made the decision to give it a go since she wanted to see if it would assist him. Additionally, Michael would have preferred that. Michael recorded that Ethan had a mild tea made the night before as the first dosage of the supplemental medication, which he took under close medical monitoring. The adjustments were double-checked by the hospital pharmacy and Dr. Chang. At night, he felt much better, and the temperature that had climbed again after the conventional medicine in the morning had gone down faster than in earlier cycles. When this combination method was 3 days into its implementation, Ethan requested to sit on a chair by his bedside instead of lying down. On day 5, he was able to eat half a sandwich and a tiny bowl of soup again because his hunger had returned. The team of medical experts now involved in his case welcomed each small victory as he made cautious but steady improvements. News of the unorthodox procedure quickly circulated around the medical facility. As Ethan's condition improved, a number of physicians from other departments arrived to assess the situation. Their initial skepticism gradually transformed into measured interest. In the hospital cafeteria, Dr. Wright approached Sarah as she compelled herself to eat a sandwich during a rare break from Ethan's bedside. As the doctor slid into the seat across from Sarah, he remarked that your son's case was exceptional, mentioning both the source of his infection and his reaction to the supplementary treatment. Assuming you're okay with it, we'd like to record it anonymously for the medical journal. Sarah cautiously nodded. Michael would have preferred it if it benefited other kids. Dr. Wright went on to say something else, but in a softer tone. Once a month, the hospital's charitable foundation looks into cases of severe medical difficulty. The committee has decided to reimburse 80% of Ethan's hospital bills because of his exceptional condition and your economical predicament. Sarah let go of the sandwich. Excuse me, Your character and work ethic were endorsed by multiple staff members. Dr. Chang's presentation to the board was highly convincing. Dr. Wright's explanation was accompanied by a tiny smile. When unanticipated costs make it hard to meet basic living expenses, there is a fund set aside specifically for situations like yours. After what seemed like an eternity, Sarah finally felt her chest tighten. She had been unable to look beyond the mounting medical expenditures, which threatened to destroy their fragile financial situation. It was as if this sudden relief were the first gasps of air after being about to drown. Later that night, Sarah saw that Ethan was finally sleeping soundly after their ordeal began, so she knelt down by his bedside and read Michael's journal to a page where Ethan had marked a page with his hospital bracelet. Michael had jotted down, "Sometimes the cure grows beside the threat," in the margin, next to a drawing of a flowering plant. With the right perspective, nature maintains its equilibrium. In light of new information, the comments took on a prophetic quality that Michael had not anticipated. Sarah had the nagging feeling that her husband was out there protecting their son from any danger he might find someplace in the universe. Standing in the doorway of Ethan's new bedroom 3 months later, Sarah watched as he meticulously organized his books on a little shelf beside the window. Shadows stretched across the hardwood floors in the waning light of afternoon, drawing attention to the whirling dust motes. Not only was their new apartment clean and inexpensive, but it was also theirs. It was a one-bedroom with a converted dining nook that became Ethan's space, which was smaller than their previous one. The road leading up to this point had been long and winding. Upon leaving the hospital after 7 days, Ethan was given a treatment plan that would last for another 8 weeks. He had been steadily but gradually getting better, his little frame regaining strength with each passing day. Despite everything, Michael's notebook had been there for him every step of the way, taking the place of Mr. Button's as the object he clung to in times of worry or insomnia. It had been difficult enough to find a new place to live. It didn't matter how good Sarah's credit was before or after her eviction from Cedar Heights. No landlord would risk renting to her after that. The elderly neighbor who had previously shied away from them in the hall, Mrs. Wilson, was the one who came up with the solution in the end. Sarah was informed by her sister, who she saw outside the hospital one evening, that "My sister owns a duplex on Maple Street. There was a recent opening in the upper unit. She is prepared to forego the security deposit if you can assist with repairs, but it needs some work." It was as if God himself had intervened through the offer. Sarah was able to take on additional shifts without having to worry about commuting time because the apartment was within walking distance of Ethan's school and the hospital. They were able to make ends meet with their dwindling resources by bartering for reduced rent in exchange for doing small repairs, chiefly painting and a little light carpentry. Sarah was brought back to the present moment by Ethan's voice. "Mom, I need to know where to keep Dad's journal." After coming around the corner, Sarah crouched down next to him and looked over the relatively organized bookcase. "It is deserving of a certain spot, in my opinion. Perhaps it is always in the middle. Exactly here." After carefully positioning the leather-bound book where she had directed, Ethan gave a somber nod. He hesitated, his fingertips resting on the weathered cover, before turning to face her. "Does Dr. Chang have an appointment today?" "I agree with that. She has a unique gift in store for you." Sarah ran her fingers through his hair, taking note of the way it had grown back its shine in the past few weeks. With his hunger back, his puffy cheeks and under-eye bags had diminished. The same inquisitive glint in his eyes returned, and he appeared just like Michael's son. Ethan sprinted to answer the door as his bare feet slid across the hardwood floor when the bell sounded. Sarah trailed along at a leisurely pace, grinning at his enthusiasm. Upon arriving at the narrow entrance, she discovered Ethan already engaged in a discussion with Dr. Chang and a girl around his age, Lucy, who could only be the daughter of the scientist. Her doctor, Miss Miller, greeted her with a kind word. "I really hope we aren't disturbing you while you get settled in." Sarah, motioning for them to come inside, reassured her that it was not the case. "We're nearly through with the unpacking." Elias was merely sorting his library books. A wrapped present, bound with a blue ribbon, was clutched by Lucy, a child with a serious expression and the perceptive eyes of her mother. She went on to tell Ethan that the present was meant for him. Based on what Mum mentioned, you seem to have misplaced your beloved bear. Sarah sought encouragement from Ethan as he nervously accepted the package. Carefully removing the wrapping paper and untying the ribbon, he awaited her affirmative nod. There was a handmade teddy bear inside, its brown fur, plush and colourful, button-on eyes reminiscent of Mr. Button's, but not an exact copy. According to Dr. Chang, this bear is from the same town as your original bear, but it has been treated extensively and is now parasite-free. When the artists there found out what had transpired, they were shocked and wanted to make apologies. Fearlessly, Ethan ran his fingertips over the fur and stitching of the bear as he observed it. "Is his name known?" "Is that so?" he inquired of Lucy. "I think he looks like a professor because he's smart enough not to have bugs, but you get to name him," she said matter-of-factly. As a result of this surprise evaluation, Ethan laughed, which was Sarah's first real chuckle in months. He kept saying Professor as if to put the name to the test, which is great. While the kids showed Professor around their new house in Ethan's room, Sarah escorted Dr. Chang to the compact kitchen. As she watched Ethan embrace this new chapter, she felt a wave of emotion, but the familiar domestic ritual of brewing tea helped to calm her. She merely expressed her gratitude. In gratitude for everything, the care, the assistance with medical expenses, and this, she extended her hand to embrace the apartment and all it stood for. A new beginning. "Thank you," but Dr. Chang ignored it. "Really, I didn't do much." Michael should be considered the true hero of the story because his notes and research were the deciding factors for Ethan. From what I understand, Sarah was informed by the hospital's research team and Dr. Chang that clinical trials of a modified version of the botanical medication that had helped Ethan had begun. This, of course, applies to others as well. It's surreal to consider that years later, Michael's final journey could wind up rescuing lives. "Not out of the ordinary, Dr. Chang softly corrected. Fitting. Between humans and the natural world, between ancient wisdom and cutting-edge research, Michael was always on the lookout for new links. Seeing his work carried on in this way would have made him happy. While Sarah's thoughts wandered to Michael, the kettle whistled and she poured boiling water over tea bags, her movements robotic. Not the long-lived, heartbreaking memories of loss, but the happier ones. Michael teaching Ethan how to use a camera, Michael's mirth as Sarah ruined their anniversary dinner, and Michael planting a kiss on Sarah's temple before he departed on his last journey, vowing to return with something truly remarkable for them both. Despite his wildest expectations, he had kept his word. Lucy and Ethan's shared immature laughter resounded across Ethan's room, along with the repetitive thump-thump of what seemed like a pillow battle. Laughter and knowing looks passed between Sarah and Dr. Chang. Sarah expressed her happiness that he had made a buddy. When news of the parasites spread, the students at his former school were not very nice. In response, Dr. Chang said that Lucy had knowledge of uniqueness. In the past 2 years, she has also battled illness. This offers her wisdom beyond her years. As night fell, the sky beyond the kitchen window revealed the first stars of the season. Compared to their former apartment, this neighborhood was incredibly serene and tranquil. In this silent moment, Sarah felt a place they were intended to be, a sense of rightness she hadn't felt in years. There will be challenges ahead. They would still have to deal with Ethan's follow-up visits, their limited financial resources, and the never-ending struggle to start over. Sarah, however, felt that they were actually making progress instead of just surviving for the first time after Michael's death. Along with that progress came optimism, the kind of optimism that shines as brightly and steadily as the stars that now blanket the sky and seem to be keeping tabs on them from afar. As we grow older, we realize that the hardest times in life usually teach us the most valuable lessons. The story of Sarah and Ethan's trip teaches us that serendipitous encounters can turn out to be our saviors, even when we're at our lowest points and feel the institutions designed to keep us safe have forsaken us. This story speaks to the feelings of those of us who have lost spouses, the unanticipated ways in which they continue to guide and protect our families even after all these years. Many of us have been in Sarah's shoes, fired from our jobs, hit hard by escalating medical costs, and anxious about leaving a legacy for our kids and grandkids. Experiencing helplessness when witnessing a child's suffering is something we've all been through. This narrative, however, is a testament to the strength we've developed over the years, the knowledge of when to stand firm and when to accept assistance, and the ability to rise again after tragedy. Above all, it serves as a poignant reminder that our efforts, similar to Michael's studies, can have an impact well beyond our lifetimes, influencing people in ways we cannot even fathom. This proves that love knows no bounds, not even death. Thanks for reading today's story. Make sure you don't miss any more stories like these by subscribing to the channel. Feel free to share your thoughts on the article by leaving a like and comment section. Until the next video, take care.